Welcome to Discograffiti, the music podcast that delivers the objective truth about the entire discography of every single artist and band that ever existed. My name is Dave Gebro.
And I'm Joe Kennedy, and we've got a lot of objective truth for you today.
Hope you're ready for it in your ear hole.
Here on Discograffiti. That's a name that we chose after great deliberation. Actually,
That's true. It was actually a process of, a couple months of conversations, I think.
Yeah, we were going to be, the second place name we almost was going to be Rock Cousteau.
Which I still love. And then it got bogged down because...
we were going to take on these personas. Like, you were going to be...
I was going to be Rock... I was lucky enough to land that name. But then you were stuck with Marco Yolo.
I was down with it. I was going to do it.
I know you were.
I was up for it.
Not really in keeping in character with you.
I'm glad I don't have to repeatedly explain the concept of Marco Yolo all the time. That probably would have certainly gotten old by now. So we passed on that wisely.
I know the character of Rock Cousteau would have overtaken me, like other tragic cautionary tales throughout rock history.
If you think we overthink this podcast already, you should have heard the original concept.
Well, actually, before Rock Cousteau, there was actually a many-step process to get there. Here were some of the discarded names that we were thinking about, if only momentarily, for the show. The first one where I was like, was Arc of a Hard Driver.
Yeah, that's terrible.
Which even that,
terrible.
Yeah, you got to start somewhere. Flip the tape, terrible. Here was the first one where I was like, okay, the harsh interrogation light looks suspiciously like yellow vinyl.
0 stars.
Okay, but here were some good ones. You ready? So you really want to know how good you were?
Yeah.
I love that one still.
And these are rough.
How about the microscope of pure objectivity? That one works. I don't hear
Okay, that's the best so far.
Comment. Yes.
That's still pretty bad.
Agreed. Stereotypes.
Okay.
Two words. Okay. Dusting for vomit. I like it.
Kind of an in joke, but
if you like music or movies or actors,
yeah, you just got to tell
anything.
everybody all the time that you have this. It's a podcast about vomit. Like,
right. Music is our bitch. I don't like that one at all. Sacred cow tipping. That I kind of like. And so you don't have to. Which I kind of like because we're doing all this work, so you don't have to. That's kind of the inference.
There's a lot of low cards in that hand. Right
there are. Anyway, needless to say, here we are, and the only reason we're as gargantuan as we are now is because we stuck with that name, amongst other completely inconsequential reasons.
We would have at best 1/3 as many followers if we were dusting for Vomit, the music podcast.
That's being very generous. Anyway,
today we will be turning the spray cans on the Bee Gees and their comprehensive discography. The Bee Gees,
minor key, Eleanor Rigby aping, string-laden, beatly boy band turned chest hair flaunting disco bandwagon flagship act, and ultimately adult contemporary penises.
And that's not even all of it. That doesn't even cover it all, really.
It doesn't at all cover it. Obviously, I don't have to ask you, Joe. This was an important band for you growing up because they were ubiquitous. Were they not?
We moved when I was little. We are born in 1972, and my family moved from the Bronx to Fort Lauderdale, Florida, in 1978. So I was 6, and that's kind of like where a lot of my memory sort of really starts.
Me too. Same era.
And so that year you had, the Saturday Night Fever soundtrack, and Grease and Star Wars were pretty much that was pretty much all there was in life at that time. It's the only thing the things that really existed.
And the Sgt. Pepper movie.
That didn't exist.
In 1978 it did.
Well, technically, it existed the same way that, I don't know.
It didn't exist for me at the time.
It didn't exist for me. Didn't exist for most.
I remember my parents making fun of me because I had adopted the John Travolta walk.
Oh, we all did it.
Yeah, but the funny thing is, if you watched that movie now, it's actually more of a gritty urban drama.
Oh, yeah.
It's not like a dancing
Well, it's like
movie.
Rocky or something, the same kind of deal. It's kind of it's hard to really express, if you weren't alive at that time, the sheer total saturation that the Bee Gees managed to achieve. It was just every 30 seconds there was a Bee Gees song coming on the radio or on TV or wherever. They were just the hugest thing. The only thing I could think of since then that was even close to that.
BTS?
No, I would say like Michael Jackson Thriller era.
Yeah.
Where it was that had that complete saturation of the culture.
If you were born in the year that we were born, or even thereabouts, growing up, they were the most mythological figures in the music industry, basically.
Yeah, and then this weird thing happened with them where they were just so huge, and then the immediate crash and burn. Which I guess we'll talk about.
We'll talk
about that later.
We'll get there,
there's a whole sociological.
What I remember is when growing up, my parents had a back room that was built, and they would have their weekend parties there, and always be coming back from school. And I can just hear it now walking up to the house and just hearing the Bee Gees blasting out, and it's just synonymous with a good time. And but let's flash back, if we can, to the Isle of Man during the 1940s. Okay, so the Gibb family moved to England in 1955, but started off on the Isle of Man there.
And the Gibbs of interest here are oldest Barry, sort of the reverse Brian Wilson of the band, because he's the oldest.
Right, and he didn't like to stay at home. He liked to go out and be on every stage in the world.
And it's not clear if he ever ate gallons of Rocky Road ice cream in one sitting, like Brian. And
he never worked at his own health food restaurant. Otherwise, it's exactly the same.
Very similar. And then the twin brothers, the fraternal twins, Robin and Maurice. Those are the three Bee Gees, and then there's another one that kind of comes along later, but we'll talk about him later. But those are the three that are of interest to us now. And
they the first musical concern they had together as a brotherly group was a skiffle band, a genre that
it's kind of skiffle. It's kind of like
care for.
Yeah, right. The first thing that are you talking about? The first thing that was released?
No. Just even before that, they had a little group called the Rattlesnakes. Mm-hmm. And then in 57, they started singing in harmony. In 58, they became Wee Johnny Hayes and the Blue Cats. And then they emigrated to Australia. In 1960, they were named the Bee Gees. And then they got a recording deal in 1963 under that name.
Now, Bee Gees is basically a reference to Barry Gibb's initials, and also there was a local DJ who was kind of promoting them, whose name is escaping me right now, that also had the same initials.
Bill Good.
Bill Good.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. So it was very sneaky.
Got that research on lockdown.
That's right. So basically, that brings us to the beginning of their career, which is Phase 1, the Australian Chipmunks, 1963 to 1966. So March 22nd, 1963, their very first single came out. The A-side was The Battle of the Blue and the Gray, and the flip was The Three Kisses of Love. And like all of the Bee Gees' output prior to 67, it was only released in Australia. And they were not known outside of there. It was written by Barry when he was 16, and it sounds like the Chipmunks fronting a marching band. I give it 2 stars.
Now, notably, Barry is already kind of writing a lot, so that's pretty cool.
It is pretty cool.
You're talking about the Battle of the Blue and Gray and all that, right?
Uh-huh.
So, there's a clip of them doing it on TV that's kind of interesting. They're like little kids, basically. And it's kind of like a Kingston Trio kind of folky thing. Seems like it's already kind of a little dated by the time of 63, 64 when they're doing these, when they're releasing these. But they're giving it a go,
Yeah, it's a little bit on
teenagers.
the self-righteous side, but they're like little kids. I give it 2 stars. The hell you throw at this?
These are kind of weird for me to star. 2 stars?
Okay, good. Just stick with my ratings.
I'm going to do it anyway.
Objectively correct.
I have my own here, but
okay. Let's hear them.
I said 2 stars.
Okay, good. Okay. July 1963, 5 months later, their second single comes out, A-side Timber, backed with Take Hold of That Star.
These are pretty basic, like 1950s sounding kind of jams.
Sort of prepubescent love
Again,
song
they
miniatures.
seem a little bit behind the times a bit.
It's very teeny bopper and very watered down doo-wop. But serviceable. I give it 2 3/4 stars. That's a real rating.
I gave this 2 for anybody who gives a shit what I think about this.
I know everyone does. March 1964. This is 8 months later. Their third single, A-side Peace of Mind, backed with Don't Say Goodbye. More of the same, I think. Better than nascent, worse than essential.
But this one's a little different to me because now it seems clear that they've heard the Beatles. So
Right.
this is the first kind of Beatles influenced. They do kind of a unison vocal thing that's kind of Beatles. I think from now on, this is kind of a little bit where they get more modern. To me, right here, they're kind of doing the Beatles. They do the Beatles a lot.
It's funny that you see a big difference because I give it again 2 3/4 stars. No joke.
I ramped this one up to 2.5.
Wow, they're getting great for you around this time. All right, so in 1964, we have their fourth single, Claustrophobia, backed with Could It Be? So now they're kind of betraying a little bit more guitar reverb, heavy Shadows influence. That seems to suit them pretty well.
Again, this one sounds Beatley. This sounds kind of like I'm happy just to dance with you, kind of George Harrison, low-key Beatles vibe.
Except with an accordion solo.
Yeah, and they're also kind of singing with the Liverpudlian kind of accent a little bit to me, it sounds like.
Yeah, they're leaning towards greatness here.
Yeah.
Towards the copy of greatness. But we're taking baby steps towards greatness here.
They're still teenagers, too. They're still very young, and they're still pretty far away from making their first proper real album. So for teenagers, this is pretty impressive.
Look, no apology necessary. I want to point out that I give this 3 stars.
3 stars for me, too?
Yeah. Okay, good. 1964, fifth single, Turn Around, Look at Me, backed with theme from the travels of Jamie McFeeters. Okay, so now we're obviously getting a little bit Carnaby Street, pre-Psych era. So the A-side's a cover, and although it's beautifully arranged, it sounds more and more like moody mid-60s British Bee Gees, I guess.
I don't really like this one. I gave this 2.
I give it 3, but maybe I was being lenient at the time because I was on vacation.
Maybe.
I think
you have to factor that in.
In retrospect, I want to copy your rating.
Okay.
1965, their sixth single, Every Day I Have to Cry, backed with You Wouldn't Know. Now they're more self-assured and writing timely sounding, chest-thrusted, Carnaby Street-style shamalams.
The B-side, I kind of like better, I think, than the A-side.
Yeah?
The B-side's kind of like Kmart John Lennon to me, but it's okay. These are kind of interesting because they are kind of making very slight progressions through these if you kind of listen to them all back to back in order like this, like we did.
But super slight.
The next one's where it gets good for me, though.
Yeah, me too. Me too. So you want to talk about it?
Yeah, so Wine and Women, that's the next single. And this one kind of has like a blown out kind of production style. It's kind of like getting almost sort of into like what like Nuggets kind of recordings sound like. Kind of regional musicians and engineering quality and a little bit harder edged. That song especially I quite like. I like.
You know why
I give
that
this
is?
single 3. Why is that?
Because the producer that took them to where they needed to go started with them here. It's Bill Shepard.
I see. Okay.
Bill Shepard started producing them here, and he would go with the group to England when they launched their huge career.
Yeah, this one seems like a step forward for sure. The B-side's kind of like a folk, like Dylan kind of thing.
Well, I think more Donovan-like. It's kind of like...
they're aiming for Dylan, and they achieve Donovan.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a common, common.
The funny thing is, the same thing happened to Donovan. But I like Follow the Wind though. It's
good. Yeah, this is a good single.
Yeah, I give this 4 stars. Actually.
Okay, I give 3.5.
3.5. Man, you are. I see who's going to be the hard ass here.
Okay.
All right. So their 8th single is "I Was a Lover." By the way, I'm really sorry I hurt your feelings. Just that.
I'll get over it.
All right. 8th single, 1965. "I Was a Lover, a Leader of Men," backed with "And the Children Laughing." So a little bit. So, kind of waltz time psych pop, right?
This one seemed like a dud to me. I don't know.
A little bit like Diminishing Returns.
I gave this one 1 star. I didn't like it. I didn't like this one.
Wow. Well, if the B-side's even worse if you didn't like the A-side. It's 10th rate Xerox copy Bob Dylan that winds up being like shitty Barry McGuire.
Yeah, they can't all be home runs.
No.
They're releasing a lot of singles here, so you get some hits and misses.
Yeah. But I like the A-side better than you do. I give it 3 stars.
So you can find all this stuff. Well, I guess now we're kind of getting into the comp. There's a comp that was released, Brilliant from Birth comp, that collects pretty much all of these and then a bunch of other stuff, pretty much all their Aussie outputs.
It's like a clearinghouse for all that stuff.
Yeah, I think there's like 50, 60 songs out of it.
Frankly, it's above just like of historical interest. There's some actually good stuff here that deserves to be
I picked out a
to.
few that I liked from that collection.
Your best bet, honestly, is to forget this stupid collection, this venal repackaging, and just go to discography.com or
put the good
follow
ones
along.
on.
Yeah. All you need is our playlist. But some of the great other ones, Butterfly.
Yeah, I like that one a lot.
Butterfly's awesome. And by the way, he redid that a couple of years ago.
Gillian Welch and David Rawlings.
It's the only worthwhile track on that whole comp.
That's the only thing you like on all of Brilliant from Birth?
No.
On that comp. On Very Gibb
on
comp,
the country comp.
Yeah. It's a nice cover. Gillian Welch and David Rawlings. And it's a good tune. Barry's only still like 19 or 20 or something when he wrote that.
Yeah, and that's a really, really good song. And then there's some more great ones. In the Morning, the original version, which they later exhumed for the Melody soundtrack in 1971.
Mm-hmm. Like Nobody Else, that's a pretty cool R&B kind of nuggetsy thing. Some of these on the Brilliant from Birth comp do get in that kind of nuggets sort of space. So if that's your kind of thing, you probably find a few that you like because it's.
But Like Nobody Else is the perfect example.
Yeah, that's kind of the. It really does have that nuggets sound to it.
Yeah. And then there's a few other ones. Coleman, Exit Stage Right, I'll Know What to Do. All good ones. All right, so November 1965, their debut record, the Bee Gees sing and play 14 Barry Gibb songs. So this is basically a collection of their early singles from Australia and 3 other random songs. To me, the most notable of the bunch is the doo-wop inspired How Love Was True. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, everything's been rated thus far.
Right.
1966 single, I Want Home, backed with Cherry Red. So I Want Home is the first time you can actually hear the droning psych influences that pulled them through the remainder of the 60s. And then Cherry Red sounds like it was cut from the same pillowy harmony cloth as the Beatles' Yes It Is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, nice single.
Yeah, I give this one 3.5.
Yeah, 3.5 for me too. Good psych jam on side A. It has the good, like kind of heavy sort of sound to it.
Yeah.
Good sound for them.
Then moving on into another one from 66, Monday's Rain, backed with All of My Life. Monday's Rain is very heavily characterized by something that Joe hates, which is Robin's goat-like vibrato.
I call it Goat Robin.
Yeah, he's not a fan.
I guess I'll just address the Robin thing now. Like, Robin's obviously talented. He's not like he can't sing. He can hit all the notes. He writes some good songs. He's a key part of the band.
It's divisive.
A lot of his songs bum me out. Just the choices, the style of singing is, it's
almost kabuki maudlin.
Yeah, I mean that's his style. That's how he sings. Some people may not be as bummed out by it as I was, but the Robin songs are a tough go for me, especially when he's really pouring it on.
And that's okay. You know what? Beyond the Grave. He's pissed at you for saying that, but he loves you for tackling all the work and taking it seriously. So don't worry about it.
Yeah, he took himself pretty seriously. It seems
very seriously. All right, so the B side, All of My Life, is even better. I think it's like a very Beatley Barry number that tickles those psych funny bones just so.
Yeah, there's a lot of Beatle pastiche in this era, and I feel like we're not really even we're
not even there.
We're barely into their career, and this seems like I've already heard a lot of Bee Gees at this point, and they're kind of not even really going yet. This is just kind of the ramp up to
this is
their
totally
real stuff.
The ramp up. Most people don't even know about this.
Yeah,
stuff.
all this stuff was not even released internationally until it was just reissued recently. So this is all still the Australia period.
The thing is, everyone knows about disco era Bee Gees. Not as many people know about Psych era Bee Gees, and even less people know about the Australian stuff. Mm-hmm. So moving right along, we got the first single that they became well known for, albeit not in a gigantic international sense. Spicks and Specks, backed with I Am the World.
It's so like it's by the Thamesmen or something.
Yeah,
Cups and Cakes.
Cups and Cakes.
I wonder if that's what they were thinking of when they.
I got to tell you, I love this song.
It's pretty good.
There's probably a time when I wouldn't have liked it nearly as much, but I think it's sort of one of those 4 to the floor mini masterpieces from during that time.
Yeah, there's a couple of cool things from this period. I feel like the songwriting's not really quite where it's going to go yet, but they're still very young, and you can see the promise in it for sure.
This is basically an initial talent audition within themselves to gain entrance into the rarefied air of English pop.
Yeah, I think this is the record that got them the real record deal.
Right. So I give it 4 stars. I actually very much like it.
I gave this 3.
Then we have the album Spicks and Specks, and so unlike the previous record, which had only contained 3 songs that hadn't appeared on other stuff, Spicks and Specks can really be regarded as the first proper album for
I agree.
the group.
Yes.
Yeah. So the best of the rest is as follows. So Play Down is probably the best song on it that hasn't been heard elsewhere.
Yeah, and it sounds kind of Bee Gee-ish. Like it kind of has Barry's distinct kind of like melodic sense to it. It sounds like what they're going to sound like.
Right. And the song is actually so good that there's a fucking mouth harmonica solo in it, and I won't even take it down a peg for it.
Kinda, that one's kind of almost disqualifies it.
It almost does, yeah. Wah, wah, wah. And there's a few other good songs, but that's not a great record. I give it 2.5 stars.
What did I give that here? I gave that one 2.
Okay, fair enough.
The other thing that was kind of note, I kind of liked How Many Birds, which
that's a good song.
Appropriately sounds like The Birds.
Yeah, but without the Y.
Without the Y. But yeah, that one's pretty good.
So they really didn't have a lot of success. All the success they did have was sequestered in their homeland. So they went to England. This is January 4th, 1967. They sailed to England. So while they were at sea, the most influential newspaper in Australia, Go Set, had said Spicks and Specks was the best single of the year. And then Brian Epstein had gotten demos. The demos had been passed on to Robert Stigwood, who had recently joined NEMS, Epstein's company. And then after an audition with Stigwood in that next month, in February of 67, the Bee Gees signed a 5-year contract with Polydor.
It's amazing how things worked back then.
Yeah, you just take a giant ship overseas and sign a record deal.
I guess they had recorded like 85 songs or something by then. And they're like 20 years old, so I guess they worked pretty hard to get there.
They did. And this truly is the beginning for them. He backed them hardcore. Without Stigwood, who the hell knows, honestly? I mean,
you could start here and you still have plenty to dig into.
Yeah.
Most people do. I think the Australia period's pretty obscure of their career, but definitely worth checking out, especially if you're into that kind of like Nuggets kind of sound. There's a bunch of those kind of things.
What wound up changing their vibe is before the first album, the group expanded, and you brought in Colin Peterson and Vince Maloney, and from all accounts, this was a band.
Well, they also they start making their first album pretty much, and they start using a lot of brass and strings. The records get a lot more ornate,
right.
So it takes it into a more classy kind of pop thing, and less so much like garagey bands like they were in England. In Australia.
Yeah.
When they get to England, it's more of like they kind of go into this sort of like zombies, Baroque kind of mode.
It's building off that Eleanor Rigby minor chord, like dour.
Right. I guess the point is they got the budget to do all that stuff.
Oh yeah.
To put lots of strings and stuff on their records, and
that
becomes pretty prominent. That's a distinct feature throughout their career. The kind of lush orchestra stuff.
The first big one was New York mining disaster 1941, which was again with the Beatles piggybacking. It was sent out to DJs with a blank white label, so that they would do a Klaatu thing.
And then some people fell for it and thought it was the Beatles, which is completely inexplicable to me.
It is inexplicable.
Like, did people just not have ears or anything?
And by the way, it's an interesting song because the harmony vocal is more prominent over the main line, isn't it?
That harmony of that song kind of sounds like disconsonant to me, like they're singing in parallel fifths or something that you're not supposed to do harmony-wise.
Yeah. And they put the bleeding goat up front. So
that one's not my favorite. That's to me one of the not highlights of this first record. But
this kind of brings us into phase 2. So
phase 2.
Phase 2, the psychedelic years, 1967 to 1969.
Here we are.
So album number 1 is Bee Gees' First, August 67.
Groovy cover done by Klaus Voormann.
This is an unbelievable record, man.
Yeah, it's very good. I'm going to try not to overuse the word pastiche in the next however many
Just
hours
say it now.
we do this.
Yeah, that's it.
But this is very influenced by the Beatles, but I think one of the more successful Beatle pastiche efforts really probably ever,
man. There's a bunch of songs you can sit, but they pull it off yet as, even though it's pastiche, it's original because it's them singing it. And there's also just this maudlin vein that the Beatles never really took up.
Yeah, I mean, maudlin is kind of a word that has negative connotations. I think it's kind of fair to call a lot of their stuff kind of maudlin. The better stuff kind of is in the more successful songs are kind of in what I'd call the melancholy sort of side.
True. I don't think there's a bad song on the record.
Yeah, I like pretty much everything on this. I mean, this is
even down to Red Chair Fade Away, which my dad hates.
That song's great.
My dad hates that fucking song.
Why does he hate that?
Because he can't really understand things like Red Chair Fade Away and Lemons Never Forget. But he can understand.
He doesn't like
Night
songs
Fever.
where inanimate objects are
That's right.
anthropomorphized.
That's right.
I can hear your dad talking about it. How can a red chair fade away?
That's right.
I don't understand it. Lemon, how could a lemon forget something?
He also hates the song "My Pet Rock Went to Sleep." But "Holiday" is an amazing song. 1 Minute Woman, great Beatles pastiche.
Yeah, "Holiday's" kind of like the perfect example of the kind of melancholy minor key sort of wistful kind of mood they could capture really well.
Same with "I Can't See Nobody."
Right.
I mean, there's just "I Close My Eyes," "Please Read Me," "To Love Somebody." The list goes on and on and on. Plus, you have some like kind of freaky Gregorian chant style psych that actually really works. Every Christian lion-hearted man can show you. I love that song.
That one, they're so leaning so hard into Strawberry Fields. It's the same like drum fills.
And I love it. I just love it. That is a definite 5-star for me.
Yeah, 5 stars for me too. They're also kind of a real band now. The two guys that they got, the drummer and the guitarist, they kind of stick around for a while. And it's not just rando session guys coming into play. They're kind of a little
this phase, what we call the psychedelic years, this is basically the lifespan of this band.
Right.
This is now a band called the Bee Gees, and then at the end of that time, it veers into faints into a different direction. So from this record, this is a legit 5-star record, and there'll be a lot of this on the playlist. It's mostly very high hit to miss ratio. 1968, we kick off that year with the single "Words."
Great single.
It's a classic, backed with "Sinking Ships." I give this 5 stars.
5 stars for me too. This seems like a kind of a template. They would do a lot of these kind of mid-tempo ballads over the years. This is their sound. This is very representative.
It wound
of what
up choking the chicken for them later on, unfortunately. But,
right.
So in February '68, you have the album "Horizontal." It's better than your typical sophomore slump record, but it just has a lower ratio of great songs than the first one.
Yeah, it kind of pairs with the first one. I feel like it seems like it's kind of it's the same. It's not surprising that it's the same artist. It's not much of a shift. There's a few too many Robins on this. Robin tunes on this one.
Look, there's in my estimation, there's 5 great songs in it. "World," "Lemons Never Forget," and it's true too, by the way. It's a little known fact about Lemons. "With the Sun in My Eyes," great song. "Massachusetts" is a Stone Cold classic, and "Harry Braff."
Harry Braff is.
I know. I like the twee stuff. You know that.
Harry Braff kind of sounds like the Monkees to me. It's like they went for Beatles and got.
And
Monkees.
Your problem with the song is?
I like the Monkees. Okay.
I love the.
What's
Monkees,
when you're aiming for Beatles and you arrive at? I guess that's still an okay result.
There's some stuff on this, and before we throw our star rating at it, "Barker of the UFO" is an awesome B-side to "Massachusetts."
If you like farty bass,
I love farty bass. Kidding me? 3.5 stars for this record. Not quite as good as the first.
I gave it exactly the same. I also like that there's a ballad, I think, kind of near the end called "Horizontal" that has a real nice kind of melody to it.
That's decent.
Yeah, "Lemons Never Forget." That one we should talk about a little more. You could play that for people and it would blow their mind that it's the Bee Gees.
Right.
It's just a really good psych tune. That's kind of the standout from this record to me.
Yeah, it's a cool song. I wish they did more anthropomorphized. So yeah, moving on. 1968, they put out a single, Jumbo, backed with the singer sang his song. I thought it was a decent enough stopgap release, but nothing earth-shaking.
It's fine.
3 stars.
3 stars.
Okay, September 68, the third album of the band, and it's called Idea.
Right, and this one gets a little more bland. This one seems like it's not as good as either of the first two, and it's kind of a little bit of a different thing. It's a little bit less like psych, kind of more straightforward.
Well, Barry, when he was interviewed, to paraphrase him, he basically said they weren't getting along at all at this point.
Right.
And it just comes across, the ego clashes come across in the music.
Well, it's starting to get more binary. There's kind of rockers and kind of wuss ballads.
Right.
So it's kind of like the songs kind of fall into one of those two things. There's some real Robin, like Goat Robin songs on this. That one, In the Summer of His Years, that's kind of like the most goat voice one.
I think it's just basically like the demands of a band in the 1960s. You inevitably, unless you were superhuman, were going to backslide into more trifle-like confectionery territory.
Well, yeah, the song "I Started a Joke" is on this record.
Yeah,
and
great
that
song.
was a big hit. That's a good example.
I've got to get a message to you. Another great one.
Well, like I started a joke. That's a good song. Mm-hmm. It was a hit. Not everybody was turned off by the voice of it. I can't. I just I'm trying to be fair. It's tough when it's a singer that you don't like. It's tough to get around it.
Most people have opinions about music, but when you have a show like This Guy Graffiti, it's an objective truth about music. So you don't need to apologize about it.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
I'm going to probably keep apologizing because I feel bad about how much I don't like the way Robin gets.
You don't always have to speak well of the dead.
Right, okay.
Okay?
All right.
Especially if you were bad-mouthing him when he was alive. And that was...
I don't think I really thought about it much until now. I don't think it really crossed my mind how Robin gets saying.
All I hear from you is Robin sucks, Robin this, Robin that.
For like 30 years now.
This album is not the greatest thing in the world.
One other tune I want to mention because I think it's kind of key in their advancement.
Can I guess?
Mm-hmm.
Is it Killbridge
It's
Towers?
Killbridge Towers,
I knew
yes.
it.
And this has they have now discovered the major 7th chord, which is kind of a chord that's it's a very melancholy, wistful chord. It basically has a major chord and a minor chord in it, so it's kind of a happy, sad kind of sounding chord. And a lot of their later hits really exploit the magic of the major 7th chord. How do you mend a broken heart?
It's amazing it took them until 1968 to find it.
Well, yeah, it's kind of like a jazzy chord, really.
Right.
But yeah, so it's kind of a new color for them, and they start using it from here on out.
Worthy of note, the Vince Maloney, they must have been nice guys, the Gibbs, because they let him put a song on the goddamn album.
He's the guitar player.
Right. So he wrote a song on this called Such a Shame, and it was about how it was a shame that the group is falling apart. Okay. All right. I give this 2.5 stars.
I gave Idea 3 stars.
Okay. More forgiving. All right. 1969, Odessa. All right. Let's talk about this fucking behemoth of a record. First of all, the heft of it. This thing was coated in vinyl, right? Was it vinyl?
No, it's like a kind of a velvety. We had so my mom.
You have the original?
Yeah, my mom had this. So this was in the my parents were young when I was born.
First of all, this is a rock opera. Continue.
Sort of. It's sort of a rock opera.
Ish.
My parents were young when I was born. They were in the early 20s, and I kind of inherited their record collection. So I got all my dad's records, all my mom's records. They're kind of all, and big, huge box of 45s. But Odessa was in there. My mom's big Bee Gees fan, and I remember Odessa, like the cover of it and the packaging, the way it was made. It just felt very forbidding, like I wasn't supposed to open it or something.
Well, this was intended as a concept album about the loss of some made-up ship in 1899. So this fucked the band up completely, and it basically rendered them inactive as a band, and split them apart as a brotherly unit for a while.
Some people swear by it.
Some people swear by it, and actually I'm kind of in the middle, although this typically is truly my zone I love stuff like this.
The concept is very loosely adhered to, if at all.
It's one of those like strains of concept albums where it starts as a concept album and literally right out of the gate they're like, fuck it, let's just do a regular album. But then they leave the concept-y thing in.
Well, the first song is like a 7.5 minute like abomination. It's like the real opera-y parts.
Right.
It's about the boat wreck and all that.
I don't think it's an abomination, but it's certainly not a great song.
No, I don't like that at all.
Look,
there's a part of it where Robin is like double tracking his voice, and he's like, so it's like double track goat voice, which like with this extreme vibrato. So it's like it's the weirdest thing to hear double tracked because it's like oscillating out of phase with itself, the vibrato, and then like it sounds.
Most people
sounds
don't
like
understand
a theremin or something. Not in a good way.
Most people don't understand that Bee Gees. That is not Barry Gibb. That is Bleating Goat. The Bleating Goats.
That first song is no.
It's length. If you love Robin, you'll love it. Conversely,
there's also a lot of really overdone string orchestra stuff.
I love a lot of that shit. I really do.
Like the whole side 4 is mostly orchestra, just like instrumental.
All right, most of this album to me is good. Some of it is great. There's nothing bad to me on it. I'd say the great stuff is I've plucked out 5 songs that are going to be on the playlist. You'll Never See My Face Again, which is awesome.
That's good.
Melody Fair is awesome.
That's a nice chamber pop thing.
Lamplight is awesome.
Okay, so yeah, Lamplight's kind of an important one to talk about because that kind of broke up the band for a minute.
Right. Let's go back to that. I just want to finish it. Give Your Best is really good country informed track on the record, and I Laugh in Your Face. Those are the 5 that I love. But Lamplight, go ahead.
So yeah, Lamplight's a Robin song. It's a good song. It's got a really big, epic, catchy hook in the chorus. And so Robin, the brothers are kind of locked in an ego battle at this point. It really comes to a head on this record. You really get the sense that Barry just wanted to make a straight-ahead record because all the Barry songs seem like his just regular-ass Barry songs. He doesn't seem like he's really participating in the concept record. But they end up choosing Barry's song, First of May, which is an okay song. It's kind of a run-of-the-mill Barry song.
I think it's a good song.
Not one of his best, really.
No, it's not.
And they went with that over Lamplight, and they probably should have gone with Lamplight. Lampligh's a better song. Robin's kind of right, I think, and it seemed like a more obvious single. Some A&R guy was probably like, we don't want this goat verse part. I don't know.
Right.
But and then so Robin ends up kind of leaving the band over it. As I guess the First of May single also didn't do well.
Right. So there were 2 reasons.
Right.
Ultimately, this is just like every time I come back to Odessa, it feels like it's going to be better than it truly actually is or how I want it to be. But it still is, I think, a very good album, and I give it 3.5 stars.
I gave it 2.5. And
wow.
I didn't like it really that much. I like some of the Barry songs. There's a couple other things on here that are just weird, like Marley Pert Drive, which is like an obvious rip of The Weight.
Yeah, it's a
direct rip of, and it kind of just makes you realize how good The Weight is.
Right.
And it's also just really weird that this like Americana song that obviously sounds like the band is on this like not this like rock concept album about a sinking boat in Russia.
Right.
It doesn't really make any sense. It makes you think that like
basically,
Barry's not really participating.
Barry's trying to sink the boat, basically, is what he's doing. They should have called it Sink the Boat.
What about Edison? Edison's so fucking stupid.
No. Listen,
that song is idiotic.
I don't think there's a bad song on the record.
Edison, if you're curious, is a very straightforward tribute to Thomas Edison, and it's very dumb.
Well, no, they knew him well, and they knew him as Tommy Edison, so it makes total sense if you know that.
I gave this 2.5. I don't really like Odessa.
They finished out the decade with a single called Tomorrow, Tomorrow, backed with Sun in My Morning. And this is the first single that they released after Robin had quit. They were now down to a trio, Barry, Maurice, and the drummer, Colin Peterson. So Vince was out too. The A-side is a solid, if unexceptional, Barry Belter. And Sun in My Morning is, I think, an excellent folky ballad. This was the start of a period of great uncertainty for the band. and it's certainly their first trek across the Sahara of popularity. But this single, I give 3.5 stars.
I gave this 3. Pretty good song, but you're right. Yeah, this is kind of where they sort of begin a kind of different phase.
That's right.
Is that right, Dave?
It is phase? Right. Phase 3, Sailing the Schmaltzy Seas, 1970 to 1973. All right, so before we even get into the records, here's the thing. These guys, you got to understand this about the Bee Gees. Not many people do, I think, or consciously do. They set an adult contemporary template in the early 70s. They interrupted it. They bookmarked it by having an astronomically successful disco career, and then they revisited it for decades.
Right. Yeah, they were. So, yeah, this is like 1970 we're at now, correct?
Yeah, this is, I mean, it can totally be argued that this is the real Bee Gees. You strip off the Beatles, and before you throw on the disco, this is them writing from their hearts, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, and it's so, like, classically, okay, the 60s are over now. We all got to, like, cool out.
Right,
We all got to mellow out and grow up. And like
so
be adults.
The first one,
they really epitomize this very well.
You could tell they're adults because the cover of the first album in this era is a Robinless Bee Gees dressed in armor.
It's like Arthurian knight round table kind of
with an
gear.
album called Cucumber Castle, referencing a song that they'd released 3 years prior.
This is one of the most Spinal Tap things that was not actually done in the movie Spinal Tap.
So
like Cucumber Castle should be the record that's directly before Shark Sandwich.
So I'm right, but I'm doing this trawl and I'm listening to this album and I have my knife out and the knife dissolves in my hand and becomes a flower, Joe, because I love this record.
It's okay.
I really do. There's a lot of really good stuff on this.
This whole string of these are, you know, this is good for the playlist thing. Is you can pluck off a few good ones on each one, but these, you know, I listen to all these right in a row. That's how we do this podcast, and a lot of it blends together for me. It's kind of this kind of a lot of soft rock. The records they get a little bit samey.
There's a very strong country soul vibe, which again was probably just pulled outright from the band. But there's also a concurrent tendency towards heavily syrupy, string-laden schmaltz, which is basically their 60s stuff with the psych rubbed off. All right, so on this album, I believe that there's that half of it's great. If Only I Had My Mind on Something Else sounds to me like a dry run for the next year's How Can You Mend a Broken Heart?
Yeah, that's okay. So, you know, Barry, a lot of these records kind of start off with big, like really good Barry ballads. And this is a good example of one where the way it's written, he just connects the dots all the right ways. It's a very good, melodically satisfying song. He's usually good for like one home run like that, at least per record.
Yeah, I mean, to me, there's a few other ones. First of all, you have I.O. in the tradition of cartoony pre-Graceland Africa rips, a la Taproot Manuscript by Neil Diamond.
It's a narrow but proud tradition.
It's a micro.
It's a narrow and not really
best.
even that proud tradition.
It's a very shamed tradition. Then You Left Me, I love. The Lord kind of reminds me of Dear Doctor by the Stones, that kind of country.
It's kind of ironic country song.
Sweetheart, My Thing, which is a really good Maurice track.
My Thing kind of sounds like an Elephant Six kind of song, you know, like kind of like it would be like Olivia Tremor Control or something, like even down to the slightly out of tune guitar. It's like perfectly Elephant Sixy song. That's kind of a gem. That's kind of a gem song. That was kind of one of my favorites.
I'm guessing you don't like this record as much. I give it.
It's okay. You know, I gave it 3, and I think, you know, I wish they had made a whole. These records start to get where if they had just left off some of the ballads, the records would have. But you know, I guess that these are all kind of short.
Or
too.
just put out one record a year instead of 2.
Yeah. There's a lot of kind of like, you know, they feel like they got to hedge their bets with like these kind of goopy ballads, and there's always like a handful of those.
So I mean, to me, that's not even the Sahara. Qualitatively, the Sahara aesthetically as well as commercially was the next record.
Right.
So 2 years on is the second record from 1970.
Hey, and guess who's back?
Yep.
Go boy.
Robin's back, but it's not making much of a difference. The best known track is Lonely Days, which was released as the obvious first single.
That's kind of a hit. You probably know that one. You've probably heard that one on AM radio.
It was number 3 at the time. It's but as a record, it is not their proudest moment.
Yeah, so this one's more ballad heavy, I feel like, than most of them.
Super treacly. I mean, we're now pretty much officially moving away from Carnaby Street stuff and towards the goopy end of the stick.
Also, compared to some of the records from this period, this one has kind of a clunky and slipshod kind of quality to it. It's like it sounds like it's not really recorded quite as well. The performances are kind of uneven. There's some kind of flubs on a few of the songs. It just sounds a little more rough around the edges, and rough around the edges doesn't really suit them very well.
No, it doesn't.
This one sounds like it was kind of rushed out.
Well manicured does the Bee Gees well, unless you're talking about post-1980 records. More on that later.
One of the worst songs I've heard for this entire podcast doing this was on this album. No, Sincere Relation.
That's bad.
Oh, man, that's bad.
That's friggin' bad.
Ooh,
yeah.
That one's rough.
All right, so moving on.
But there's a few more things I wanted to mention.
I'm so sorry.
There's a couple other nice songs. The Portrait of Louise is kind of, they're kind of going for that gotta get a message to you. That one's kind of got a good like Everly kind of sweep, or, that kind of big ballad sweep to it. Righteous Brothers, not Everly Brothers. It's kind of got that kind of, Wallace Soundy kind of thing it's going for.
And then Back Home is certainly more rock oriented than they usually lean towards.
Yeah. What'd you rate this? What did you rate?
2.
I gave it 2.5.
Yeah, I don't care for this one very much. 1971, they did the soundtrack for a movie called Melody. The main ad here, really, it's not. We're not rating the record. We're just rating the song because it's the only thing. Everything else is string stuff. Yeah. There's a Crosby, Stills and Nash tune on it. This was first recorded in '65 by these guys. Re-recorded in 1970 for the film. Changed to Morning of My Life. This I give 5 stars to.
Yeah, I love this. So this is, they re-recorded this, but with a real like 70s like Kodachrome film kind of vibe to it.
Yep, like Bread.
Yeah, it's got a, it definitely has a soft rock goop kind of to it, like
but
a kind
more
of
poppy.
layer of,
more poppy. It is very catchy.
Yeah, and his vocal is really, really nice on it. It's a good. This is definitely playlist material.
Totally on
really,
the playlist.
Really good song.
This is born for a playlist because the rest of the record's completely inessential.
Yeah,
so,
but good. That's a good gem to pluck out there. Good song.
The other thing they did in '71 is more important than that. It's a record called Trafalgar. So.
Records are coming fast and furious here. So
yeah,
a lot of material coming.
This is like an Emmett Rhodes style contract where it's like impossible, but yet somehow they're keeping up. The song that was very, very important for these guys, if it wasn't for this song, God knows if we'd even be here talking about them today, is How Can You Mend a Broken Heart? It became very important for them. It gave them the knowledge that, okay, we can be a functioning, vital concern.
It was a smash hit. It was this number one single in the U.S.
It was their first number one single in the U.S. But also the fame from this song had to carry them through the most Sahara years that they were going to experience.
The success that put some gas in the tank for a while.
Right, exactly.
That song in itself, How Do You Mend a Broken Heart, I was talking about the major 7th chord thing before, and that's another perfect example of it. The first, how can you mend? That's the major, the note that makes it the major 7. They're really leaning into that there, they also sing in the falsetto on that song, but it's a different kind of falsetto than the falsetto they would soon become famous / notorious for.
You know that moment where he goes, okay, does that count as vibrato?
That's like
or
vibrato.
Is that breath control?
That's technically tremolo. You would call
tremolo,
that. So
okay.
It's sort of a form of vibrato is when you're sort of like changing the pitch down a little bit. Tremolo is when you're kind of going.
Okay.
So technically, it's more tremolo. I guess it's a form of vibrato.
I've always
depends on how you use the words.
Loved this song.
Yeah.
Plus, Al Green's version is just so good. So
it's a first-rate ballad. Smash hit for them and kind of redefining them a little bit.
And there's other really good stuff. This is
one of the more enjoyable mid-period records.
This is a good record. Israel's on this. The Greatest Man in the World. Trafalgar is one of Maurice's most outstanding works.
Israel's kind of like a Van Morrison kind of thing, right? They're kind of going for that there.
It's really good.
They're really, I'm going to use the P word again. They really are pastiche artists. They're going to we're going to make a thing like this, and they make it pretty close, but
they have,
it's cool though.
There's some fucking bullshit on this too. Dearest, if you don't like Bleeding Goats versus Bee Gees, you're going to want to steer clear of Dearest because it's beyond cheese. It's a goat ballad. And then Lion in Winter is total dog shit as well.
Side one's pretty good. Side two pretty rough.
Yeah, it's true. Things totally slide downhill on side two. And it just drowns in schmaltz and never recovers. That's basically what occurs with it. Mm-hmm. It's basically Odessa, but the concept is carried out here because the concept of this record drowns, albeit not in 1899.
This is also some historical concept album, right?
This is too. It just seems like it. It seems like
maybe it's just the cover.
In the early 70s, they wanted things to read as redolent of concept albums. Because are we still doing this, guys? We still doing this thing? So 1972, they came out with a. Oh,
we got to rate
ratings.
Trafalgar.
Trafalgar, I give it 3.25 stars.
I gave it 3. Dude, I'm retiring the quarter star now.
Listen to me. I was on vacation in Vermont.
You sound like a jackass.
I don't care.
Quarter star.
Listen, if you're on vacation and all your thoughts are not on the vista of beauty in front of you, but am I going to give this 3 or 3.5? Let me tell you what happens real quick.
Just round down.
No, I love music. All right, so My World is on the A side and On Time is on the B side. That's their single from kicking off the year of 1972. This song's a fucking classic, and it was a lot more lucid than some of the more uncertain ballads they were churning out during this period.
It's a solid ballad. I gave this 4 stars.
I'm a 5er on this one. I love it.
It's pretty good.
1972 proceeds into a record that I believe is very underrated. To Whom It May Concern is their 10th album, released in October 72. And the thing is, they titled it this because they had no idea who their audience was anymore.
Yeah, this one, I feel like we're pretty deep in the rabbit hole here. So they did have the big hit on the last record, but they're kind of in this adult contemporary sort of zone. I guess there's other music out that's like this at the time. America, Bread, they're kind of like similar concerns that are going on at the time.
There's some changes taking place here, but you don't really hear it on the record. So
it starts again with the big epic Barry ballad.
Run to Me is classic.
That's a gem of the, that's another one you've probably heard before. That one seemed familiar to me.
Just as I want to, so before we actually train the microscope further down, this record was seen as a goodbye to the old Bee Gees because it was the last one that they had recorded solely at IBC Studios in London. It was the last one with their conductor-arranger Bill Shepherd, who had been with them since '67.
Yeah, right. So these all have that in common. They have the Bill Shepherd orchestrations on them, even still up to this. So a lot of this one has some real easy listening vibes.
And also some of these tunes were old ones that were finished or rewritten for the occasion, like I Can Bring Love.
Yeah, not a lot of like tension on this. This is a real.
There's a bunch of songs I love on this record.
I think you probably like this better than me.
Yeah. Run to Me is great. We Lost the Road is great. By the way, all these are going on the playlist. If you agree with Joe, I want you guys to write in and say, take those goddamn shitty songs off our great playlist. If you believe in what I'm saying, please write supportive emails as well. All right, We Lost the Road, Never Been Alone, the song that Joe hates and makes him break out in a cold sweat every night thinking about, Paper Mache, Cabbages and Kings, which was a number 8 Danish hit. I Can Bring Love, almost Emmett Rhodesian in its simplicity.
I Can Bring Love to me is kind of like a Bread thing. It's the kind of thing that I really like. I could understand how somebody would hate it, but I like it a lot. It's great. It's very like soft rock. You're sitting in the wicker chair and all that. But it's right up my
How
alley.
about Bad Dreams? Do you like that one?
That one's okay.
That one's like a horn-soaked rocker with this awesome wall of sound vocal harmony thing.
You Know It's For You. That's another kind of
That's
soft
a
rocky
classic.
one.
Let's
Yeah.
just stop for a second because Maurice, not known for his songwriting. This is a classic. It sounds like Paul McCartney's first record or Emmett Rhodes' first record.
These are very redolent of bread to me. I know I keep saying that, but it's
Just warm, that warmth, that warm pop thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then the thing you, I think, hate, they have a look back at some of their Psyche Day with Sweet Song of Summer.
It's just, I don't really hate it. It's weird.
It
kind of doesn't really go anywhere.
It's prog psych with a chanted coda. What's wrong with that?
It's got this. It's mainly kind of a guy just goofing around on a Moog. It's got this very prominent kind of like Moog lead happening, and it's kind of like a dirgy. It's pretty weird.
So here's the
I
Sahara.
don't really hate it. It's like more like
The Sahara's thing that we were referring to before. So there's a song that's not even close to the best song on this record that was released as a single in the U.S. called Alive. It was number 34 in 1973. That was the last top 40 hit in either the U.S. or the U.K. for the Bee Gees until Jive Talkin' in 75.
which isn't that far away, but in BG years, it seems like an
in how many
eternity.
albums they're putting out, they're just being ignored.
Yeah, that's
So
like 9 albums from now.
I give this 4 stars.
I gave it 3.
Okay, that's not that bad.
That's not that far off.
All right, then we enter into like basically, it has to be the worst, up to this point, easily the worst year for the band. 1973 was basically a puddle of dog shit for Barry, Maurice, and Robin. First, it was Life in a Tin Can. Okay, so that's the first record of 73.
We got to talk about the cover of Life in a Tin Can.
It's them in a tin can.
Literally, like looking down in it, like from bird's eye view into a tin can with like the tab is pulled off the can.
They should
Like,
actually
their faces.
They should actually pump out sardine scent from the album cover.
For a band that kind of was like a disco band, they really do have a lot of Spinal Tap kind of moments.
I know
throughout their run.
This was the first one they traveled to LA to record.
Well, it's only 8 songs, and at 8 songs, it's even a little bit of a slog.
There's one great song. The one great song will be on the playlist. It's called South Dakota Morning.
I would classify that as a good song.
Okay.
It's like a country thing. There's kind of 2 kind of songs on this record. There's kind of like the truly maudlin kind of piano ballads, and then kind of like country folk Australio-British Americana kind of songs, like they're kind of trying to do Americana, like that. Like there's bits where it even sounds like the band America.
Yeah. South Dakota Morning is not that far removed from what America was.
Yeah, I agree. It does sound like that a bit. It's this is they seem a little bit lost at this stage.
They're totally lost. I give this one 2 stars.
I give it 1.5.
And then the second part of 1973, they have this record that remains unreleased. It was supposed to be called A Kick in the Head is Worth 8 in the Pants. So
this was done. It was from the same sessions as Life in a Tin Can,
right?
I guess we were spared more Life in a Tin Can,
right?
We weren't really spared it because me and you still had to listen to it.
Well, yeah, I couldn't find most of these tracks. Were you able to?
I thought I found most of it, but I don't know.
Oh,
it's hard to
really?
get a
Okay.
definitive list of what's actually on it. I had to
Honestly, there's nothing even worth putting on the playlist that I heard.
No, it's kind of more of the same kind of aimless drift of the of Life in a Tin Can. More kind of maudlin soft rock,
And it was Robert Stigwood himself who refused to for the album to get released. It just thought it wasn't commercial enough. But at that point, they probably had no idea which way to turn.
Right. So they're a few albums away from their big smash hit, and time moves a lot faster in those days. You don't have a hit for a couple of years. You're in a kind of a precarious position back then.
Right. So at the end of 1973, this band that was not that long ago had been a very valid concern are now looking at albums that are not even being released commercially.
Right.
And so wait until part 2 to find out what happens with this band. Do they disappear into the annals of obscurity?
Or maybe do they try something new?
Do they try a flip on an old formula.
They try something new and funkier.
Wouldn't you like to know? We recommend binge listening if you happen to come across this in the future. If you're coming across it now, we recommend you sitting by your phone with your trigger finger extended, waiting for a week until the next one comes. Please go on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. Please follow us. The more
also, go
followers,
to all
the
of
better.
your Spotify and Apple Music, whoever you get podcasts. Please subscribe to us. That really helps us a lot when we get subscribers.
Go on multiple platforms and follow. That helps
Tell
us
your
even
friends.
better.
Tell your friends about us.
Tell your frenemies. But we'll see you for the next one. Thank you so much for tuning in to Discograffiti. My name is Dave Gebro.
I'm Joe Kennedy, and we'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.